What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up, what up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
Yo, what's up, Rebels? Welcome back to Rebel Radio. I'm your host, Josh Levine. My guest today is my man, Justin Rezvani. He's the CEO and founder of The Amplify, which is a influencer marketing agency helping large brands connect with social influencers. He was recently named to Forbes magazine's 30 Under 30 after selling his first company. And he's definitely a dude on the rise with some good lessons to teach us. He's gonna tell us kind of what he learned growing up as the son of an entrepreneur, sort of how he's built his business through the power of focus. And he's gonna explain why bots are the future. So if you're trying to stay up on what's happening with technology, you're definitely gonna wanna hear this one. Lastly, he'll tell us how he learned to be a little bit nicer. And right now, let's hear from Justin Rezvani. So, dude, I'm excited to do this. We met kind of, I think, right after you had launched your company.
Yeah.
And just watching your journey and how it's taken off, and just hearing bits and pieces along the way of how you've made it happen. Like I've been fascinated with your story. So this is exciting for me because we meet and talk about stuff, but we never dig into all the details.
Sure.
And I know there's so much that goes into building the company the way you want to build it. So thanks for doing this.
My pleasure.
I'm excited to grill you on all the hard questions. And so I want to talk a little bit about, the Amplify when people, when I've brought it up to people, I kind of say it's an influencer marketing agency. I know it's more than that. And so maybe give us, the quick rundown of what you do and what's the company about.
I think our biggest focus is to help brands work with influencers, people that have a lot of followers on social media, more seamlessly.
Okay.
And our main focus was to build tools or technology, as people like to call it, to help do that better.
Okay.
So we find that there's 5 problems within the space, right? How do you know you're working with the right person as a brand? How do you easily communicate with that individual to create content for you? How do they distribute that content in an easy way and not sending text messages or phone calls or making it frustrating?
Sure.
How do you measure that content in real time? And then how do you actually see and scale that impact beyond the traditional audience that you might have with that influencer? So if something's doing well, how do you boost that? How do you see everything beyond vanity metrics? And then our newest thing that we actually are going to talk about today a little bit later is bots, right? So how do you take the persona of this individual influencer and digitize that with AI to communicate with an audience consistently without a person ever getting involved? And that's
crazy.
It's crazy, but it's kind of what's happening right now.
That's some crazy shit, and I know it's gonna be wild in the future as that starts to roll out. So I want to talk about all of that. But so now that we have what you do, let's kind of take a step back and figure out how we got here. So were you always into technology? Did you know that you were gonna kind of get into this kind of business from day one? Were you like the kid, always coding and all that, or where'd that come from?
I mean, I let's talk about maybe entrepreneurship first. I think I came from an entrepreneur-driven family. My dad owned his own business my whole life, so the concept of never seeing my dad in the morning and seeing him arrive at 8 p.m. every night was something I was very used to.
Yeah.
And then coming home and then doing his QuickBooks or doing his filings was something that I grew up understanding that that's just how it works.
Yeah.
So that was, I think, the first level of understanding, I probably need to own my own business because that's the only way that I knew how my father did it growing up.
At what age would you say you were conscious of that? Because I know it was
9 years old.
Really?
And I think the reason I knew I was conscious of it was around 9 and 10 years old, I would help my dad do QuickBooks.
Oh, no way.
At the house.
Yeah.
So he ran a metal manufacturing business, and he actually had actual invoices that were still on paper, right? So we're talking about the late 90s.
Yeah.
And QuickBooks was just coming around, and he had a huge computer in the house where he had to input these paper things into a computer to digitize it, and I'd be helping him do that. So that was my first instance of understanding and kind of helping him and being aware that this was something that he was doing, but he was doing it more for the family to be a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah.
And I went to private school,
Okay.
so there was that lens of knowing that, you know, I wasn't going to public school. This school cost a little bit more money than the traditional school. My parents probably had to work a little bit harder to put me in that school.
Sure.
And that's kind of how I saw it, and I saw it every day.
So were you, so starting 9, like, were you thinking about, I know some people start businesses really early and all that. Were you doing that, or were you like into music and skating and just all the shit that kids are into?
So when I
know you're also a DJ, or you were. I want to talk about that a little bit too.
Oh man, those
so,
great days.
because I want to know where that came from too.
So,
but like, what were you into as a kid?
I think as a kid, I was active in sports. So I played water polo from like 6th and 7th grade all the way through high school, all the way through the end. So I was pretty active. But I think the first time I really wanted to be an entrepreneur was when I was 13. So we had this thing in my neighborhood. So I lived in a gated community kind of growing up. And there was these curbs that used to be painted with numbers on the side. And we were living in kind of an older community.
Yeah.
So the numbers on the curb were getting faded.
Yeah.
So I found this thing online that I could get printed out. And basically it was this letter saying, hey, you know, you should have all your numbers painted on your curb in case of an emergency situation, right?
Yeah.
So because there wasn't really Google Maps back then. And if emergency services need to find your house, how are they going to find your house?
Right.
So I would go around, put these in mailboxes, and then that was my first business. I was painting numbers on curbs. And I was 13 years old, so I did that for a summer, but I was making some good money.
I always just assumed the city did that.
Yeah, no, they don't. And not in a gated community because it's all private. And then also trash cans, right? So trash cans needed to have numbers on them.
Right.
I lived in a really windy area, Porter Ranch. Trash cans would get moved around. You don't know which one was yours.
That's crazy.
That was the first instance of being an entrepreneur. And I made a couple $100 my first summer, and I was like 13. I was like, so basically, this is the kind of learning of how I want to do this probably for the rest of my life.
Nice. So again, like, let's talk about the DJ side for a minute. So were you into music then as a kid too?
I was very much into music. I was a Napster, kind of like just downloading everything possible, adding it into the soundtrack. I had the huge CD cases that I used to have in my car. I had subwoofers in my first
those
car.
Fucking Case Logic.
Those Case Logic massive.
Massive. So here's when I argue with people. You know, because like there's a lot of people my age who are convinced that like technology is ruining everything, which I think to some extent that's true.
Yeah.
But like, you know, this whole thing of like, oh, now nobody can drive because they're texting. Yes. But like we were like fumbling with those fucking Case Logic trying to find you know, you had like
It's
60,
way worse.
You had like 60 CDs and you had the pop out changer that came out of the
Yes.
like who's like the idea that they're just like, yeah, people can do this while they're driving.
Is way worse
And
than
then
actually trying to pick
you
a
had
song.
the Thomas Guide
Yeah.
for your map, right? So now you're reading this 300-page book. Like people have always sucked at driving.
Yeah. It's always been a bad thing. Now it's getting reported a little bit more.
Okay, I'm off on a tangent.
The DJ thing for me, I always loved music, but it actually came around after I graduated college.
So wait, what was the music? Like you was downloading, like, do you remember the first record that you actually bought?
I do. It was, what was Fred Durst's band?
Yeah, Limp Bizkit.
Limp Bizkit. It was a Limp Bizkit album. My mom freaked out on me because I bought it, but I think it was the hot dog flavored water one. What was that? What was that called?
Yeah, Chocolate Starfish.
Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. It was the first album I bought. It was a CD, and I bought it from Best Buy. And I was listening to my room, and my mom came in and freaked out, took the CD out, went back to Best Buy, and yelled at them for selling it to me.
No way.
And that was the first album that I ever had back in the day.
And was that like the style? Were you into that?
I was into that kind of stuff. I was into kind of just rock. This was, you know, I wasn't really into the music that I'm into now back then because I don't think it was really around. Like there was Tiesto at his old school trance stuff and Armin, but nothing really kind of the new age, you know, deep house that I'm listening to now and playing now specifically.
Okay, nice.
So the DJ thing is interesting. It really didn't come about like really seriously for me until I graduated college. So, I mean, I was listening to music, And it came out of a result of, I was living with people my whole life, like either my parents or I had roommates or I lived in my fraternity house with 23 people.
Yeah.
And then I moved out on my own when I graduated, and I was like, I need to find something to do that I can just be by myself, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't into reading yet. So I bought an Allen and Heath DB40 mixer, and I would just say, I'm going to master this thing. I'm going to master how songs get mixed. And then from there, I progressed to the CDJ 2000s, and I did that every weekend at my house. And it was my little getaway to get with myself and just be a little bit more aware. That's how I started playing.
Yeah.
And then from there, it just turned into a little thing that I, started doing more gigs, moved to West Hollywood, started playing at clubs in West Hollywood. And then
What was the first party you played?
first party I played was, do you remember the Central in Santa Monica?
Yeah.
14th in Santa Monica. Really old, like grimy, grungy place. I played a Gotta Dance Dirty party on a Thursday night.
Okay.
And that was the first kind of party that I played that was like they used to call it Versus Night. And it's funny, I don't know if you ever went to Versus, but like they had everyone go through there. Skrillex played there. Dylan Francis played there. Some of the biggest guys like that now, but this was back in the day where they weren't really that big. They just come on a Thursday night and play out there. So
That's cool.
that was the first party that I played in LA. That was pretty fun.
And was there, how'd you feel afterwards?
Amazing. Come on, DJing is like, it is the most enthralling experience ever. You're like, I want to do this full time. It's one of the most incredible experiences to be able to play songs that people are enjoying in front of you and seeing their faces and connecting with them. I think music is one of the connecting parallels of everything we have in our universe.
So was there ever a thought that would be the career?
I think at one point, yeah. I think at one point was like, well, I can do this. I bought the whole setup, right? I mean, I was like trying to produce songs, but then I just realized like, this is, I could do this full time, but it just wasn't the thing that I went for.
Yeah.
Tech ended up being the thing.
So was that like, how'd that happen? Like, was there something that was calling at you?
Yeah, definitely. So mobile marketing was something I always had as my specific goal, right? So in college, that's what my emphasis was. I want to know everything about mobile. I want to know everything about this phone and how this phone gets to someone's hand. I kicked off my career at Disney as a mobile marketing intern for the entire mobile division. So when I started there, Disney didn't have different mobile divisions. They had one mobile team. It was a team of like 7 that ran all of mobile for Disney.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of learned my focus. Then I went to mobile advertising at Gray Stripe, and I realized like, hey, this is something really interesting. Like this phone is really the only way to reach a consumer. And a bunch of my friends were influencers in LA, right? So I have lunch today with a buddy, Keegan Allen, star of Pretty Little Liars, 5 million followers on Instagram. We go out to a dinner. He posts a photo of us, and we get a bunch of likes. I get a bunch of followers. I was like, hey, are you working with brands? He's like, it's a fucking pain in the ass, right? It's like really hard for me to do that. So like any millennial in 2013, I was like, I'm going to build an app for this, right? So what came about was I just built an app. I built an app called Reach. It was just supposed to be.
You're still working at Disney?
No. I was graduated at this time.
Okay.
And then basically this app was built to just communicate with an influencer and say, hey, you want to work with this brand. You just kind of talk back and forth with the app. I know you'll be able to create content just to make it easier.
Yeah.
From there, 100 things started compounding. I thought this would just be a little side thing that I give to brands to use, and I could still kind of have, whatever I was doing on the side.
Yeah.
But it just ended up turning into a really big business really quickly. And,
So people just started, like that Reach app, people just started using that, and that became the business?
That became the business. The app was the business, and that was the hook, right? So we go to a brand and say, hey, we have this app. In 2013 and 14, nobody had an app to do influencer marketing.
So it's interesting you say, because like just thinking about your path, right? Like, so you started out saying like you kind of always knew you were going to start a business, but then this thing, I don't want to say you fell into it, but like it wasn't like you said, okay, let me write my business plan and now go start this business and this is what it is.
Yeah.
Right. It was, and so like, we talk a lot about this idea of like preparation that just leads you to opportunity.
I think the preparation was knowing I always wanted to start my own company. And I got to a point where I was at the time where it was kind of make or break for me, right? I was 25. I had nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I had a bullshit job that was paying me $50,000 a year to create decks for people that I hated. And I was selling fucking garbage ad banners on, like stuff that I hate, right?
Sure.
I talk about it in meetings that this is the most garbage advertising on earth.
Yeah.
I was working for shitty people. And it was my chance. I was like, I had a chance to do it. My parents gave me this super small loan. Said, hey, you have 3 months to figure your shit out. If you can do it, great. If not, luckily in 6 weeks, we sold 100K in campaigns out the gate.
Yeah.
So that proved the model. Said, hey, I can make money off this. I'm making more money than I would have in my old job. So let's try it.
So, but you didn't know that this was like, I mean, now sort of influencer marketing it's an industry.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mini industry, right? But at the time, like, that wasn't based on, like, you knew that was going to be the thing.
No, my bet was that social media was a thing, right? Like social media was going to be a huge thing.
Yeah.
And Instagram specifically was going to be massive.
Yeah.
And I think it was a good bet.
Mhm.
I mean, look at it now. It's 600 million users, and
Sure.
you know they're about to drop some mid-roll ads today. There's some features on that.
Is that right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's. I mean, there's some. Yeah, that was the bet. We're the Instagram company at first.
Yeah. How has so now, like, you've been doing it 3 years?
About 3 years. Yeah, 3 years almost. Two and a half.
And you know, I know it's you know, it's grown a ton. You know, it's been super successful. I'm curious, how has your personal perspective of social media changed having done this?
Tremendously,
Yeah.
to say the least. I think, you know, I've gone through this path, probably in 2016 was the biggest growth year of my life, and this path of self-awareness, of understanding who am I really as a person and where do I fall into this scheme of the world. And I think what I used to see social media as was this outlet or this place or this community or how people call it. I more see it now as some sort of an extension of a different part of your being. And it's a little different of a way to think about it, because I think the person you end up being on social media is a little bit different than some of your day-to-day sometimes.
It's curated.
It's a little bit more curated. It's a little bit more specific. And how you use that platform as an outlet is very different than the way you might be communicating individually at a dinner or looking into someone's eyes and saying something. So I've kind of found it to be a little bit different in my path of self-awareness. And I think what's going to happen is it's going to evolve, and it's going to change a lot, I think, over the next few years. But I think the concept that I have always loved about social, and what I think Instagram and Twitter created, is the concept that I can follow an individual that I don't even know to help enlighten my experience. I think that concept won't change. I think it will evolve, but I think that's one of the beautiful parts of social that people don't really discuss as much, is just the ability that you follow someone
Right.
is something very different that nothing else really has right now. And I think that's the beauty of what the platform brings.
Yeah, I think it's so, you know, what I find interesting is that, like, it can mean so many different things to different people. You know what I mean? And I think, like, I've seen the TED Talks that are like the dangers of social and how, you know, and I think that's real for some people, like that, you know, they get totally caught up in what people think about them, and there's science about the serotonin hit that happens when you get a like, or you look, you know, like all that stuff. Sure. But that's true for some people, or in certain circumstances. And then there's other things that are true, you know, in other ways. And, you know, I think it's just interesting to see how all that plays out. And it sounds like, you know, you're saying, like, you've been kind of thoughtful about what that's going to mean in your life.
Very thoughtful. Very thoughtful. I mean, I use it for very specific things. You know, as a practitioner, right?
Yeah.
I use it every single day.
Sure.
But what I'm posting on it and how I'm using it, to me, is more about, like, kind of enlightening things, right? Like, I use my Instagram stories now as just like talking about interesting, cool things that I want to just share with people that are friends with me, right? So,
Right.
like, Alexa just released this new thing of daily affirmations. So I say every morning, Alexa, what's my daily affirmation? And Alexa tells me what my daily affirmation is. That's really cool. That's exciting. That's something you can wake up to. So I tell people on Instagram stories, hey, that's something I think I share. And then I get a bunch of messages. Oh my God, that's amazing. That's really enlightening. That's really fun.
Yeah.
That's really what I've been using it for mostly.
What about, like, so you know, your business is putting influencers together with brands, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, a lot of your So now all of a sudden you're connected to a ton of influencers,
Yeah.
right? And so what have you learned from them about social?
It's very interesting because I think the magic is really around value, right? The thing that I'm seeing consistently is all these influencers are what they're creating is a value proposition for their audience, and it's all done in very different ways. Some are super funny. So you're giving them your attention, that currency of attention, because it's making you laugh and feel better. Some are really thoughtful, right? So people like Jason Silva, they're giving these enlightening talks, and you're able to share that with your friends. You seem smarter because you shared that. So that's the value attention that you're bringing. Yeah. So I think what we've found is that what these influencers teach me more than anything is that they've created a new value proposition for people that has never been kind of achieved before. Either they look great, right? So they're eye candy perhaps, or they have all these different things. But at the end, it's that they're trading attention for value.
Yeah. That's cool. I'll say, like, I was surprised. We did something together for Chelsea football.
Yeah.
Right. And so, they're a client of ours, and you brought us some influencers to come to a soccer game. And, and I was there with Julia Kelly, who's one of the influencers that you work with. And, like, she's super hot, young chick. I know she has a ton of followers and whatever. And so the interesting thing is, like, I'm standing there with her at this game, and this young girl walks up to her and, like, wanted her autograph and they ended up talking for like 10, 15 minutes together and having, like, what I don't know what they were talking about, but, like, they had a real conversation and whatever. And, I wouldn't expect, I guess you would just assume that it's a bunch of, like, horny dudes following her because she's hot. You know what I mean? And I'm sure that's a lot of her following and whatever. But also, like, she had a real human connection with this other person that, that didn't know that she was going to be at the game, that just really was walking through the stadium and saw her. Yeah. And recognized her and all that.
And I think that's just a culmination of the deep connection these individuals have with their audiences, right? I think the difference between a traditional celebrity and these digital influencers is that they have grown up, their audiences is everything to them. Whereas I think in the other realm of traditional celebrity, an audience was a derivative of their work.
Sure.
So there's a little bit of a disparity and difference between a digital social celebrity and a traditional celebrity, and that love is for their audience is just 10, 20-fold.
How do you see those things, like, converging, or is there, or, like, is that going to, is there stuff those two groups can learn from each other?
Absolutely. I think there's a melding of mastery of audience and mastery of your talent. I think traditional celebrities are trying to figure out social media right now. You hear it all the time. They're like, hey, how do we grasp our audience? How do we understand who they are? How do we communicate to them more? Some celebrities have made a seamless transition, but some are still trying to figure out, right? Some of the biggest stars in the world have the smallest social media accounts because they're either not active or they're not communicating with who their audience is.
Right. Or they just hire agencies to run their stuff.
Yeah, it's like
totally impersonal.
It's not real, right?
Who's done a good job of that?
I think Kevin Hart's done a great job of that.
Okay.
I got to give the guy credit. He's done an incredible job of building his brand on social.
Yeah.
And because I would see him as a traditional celebrity that built out kind of a social thing.
Totally.
Who else would be great? Arnold Schwarzenegger. Have you
Really?
seen this guy? He's
No.
pretty good on Instagram. I think he's pretty active. He's pretty funny. I think he communicates to his audience very direct. I'm sure he's being coached constantly by a good
if a
team.
70-year-old can do it, like, what excuse?
I think he's doing a pretty
now he
good
does
job.
have a lot of time and money on his hands.
Yeah, he does. I think he's been doing a good job of that.
Interesting. That's a trip. So, how have you, you weren't, let's assume you weren't expecting kind of your company to grow as quickly as it did. So what have you changed in response to that?
I think the concept of success and the concept of money has changed a lot for me in the last couple of years. I was always so hungry to go after just the dollar sales, this and that, kind of missing the piece of me. And I think this journey of self-awareness has really opened my eyes to what my father always told me, which was like, money is just a tool in everything that you're doing. It's not the thing that you need to strive for. So I've changed tremendously of just being way more self-aware of like, who am I as an individual, and like, what is my core purpose? And I see that with my team too. Like, I was my CEO-ness of like 13, 14, and 15, and even half of 16, I was a fucking asshole. I was a piece of shit boss. I was really bad to my employees, and I didn't respect them as much as I do now. And that's because I really wasn't self-aware. I thought people should work for you, and they should work hard, and they should do that, and they should have weekends off. It's like, that was the concept that I had in my head, and I didn't have a real purpose beyond that. What's changed, I think, in this time of advancing, going through an acquisition, having like kind of mentors like David Jones in my life, of just really looking at, well, the purpose of what you're here for is a lot more impactful than how well your P&L is doing and how your business, like, what is that purpose? And your P&L will derive afterwards what your purpose happens to be. If you have a good, strong purpose in building a great business, it's probably going to be pretty profitable.
So it's hard in that scenario to say kind of what if, right? But is it possible that the reason you've been as successful as you are is because you approach things a certain way in the past, right? So was it necessary to be an asshole in order to get to this point? And is it actually a danger of losing that as you shift your approach?
I think at the time it was necessary.
Okay.
I think I did what I had to do to get where I needed to be. I think now, I'm not saying I've lost all of it. I've just known how to channel it properly. I'm still as hungry as ever. I'm working even more hours than I think I did previously, but I'm working a little bit smarter, just because I'm a little bit more aware of what I should focus on, what should I not focus on, what should I do, what should I not do, and I have way more support and more tools in my arsenal. What I have to like caveat is like, I didn't have anything at the beginning of this business.
Sure.
I had no investors.
Yeah.
I had no real advisors. We'd have breakfast sometimes to catch up and see what's going on. But in general, I didn't know anybody. I had nothing.
Right.
I only had myself to figure out how the fuck I'm going to do this whole thing. Now, I have a ton of resources that I can pull from. I have an amazing company. I have an amazing team. I have amazing staff. So I get to kind of change and kind of use and harp that. So I think, I think I needed to be a little bit of that person back in the day. Maybe I could have been a little bit less, pulled back a little bit, but I've grown from it. I've learned from it. And the people that have stuck by me have seen the change and the growth and building to the human I am today. So I'm happy about growing from it because I learned from it a lot.
I don't know that, that's an interesting one because I think like, in hindsight, everything makes sense, right? Like, it's easy to see our mistakes after we've survived them.
Yeah.
And all that stuff. But I think, when you're in it, like, sometimes I wonder, like, because I'm not, maybe James will disagree, but, I'm not an asshole boss, right? Like, and I can see in certain circumstances where that served me and others where it's probably hurt me, right? And maybe I should have been a little bit more of an asshole or whatever. But, again, when you're in it, you don't see those things.
You're just blinded.
You just kind of do you, right? And things happen the way they happen. And then afterwards, you have an opportunity to go look back and whatever. So I guess I wonder, you talk about, having more tools now to work with. Like, what are some of those tools, and how do you then plot your course going forward?
So I think one of the big tools is a little bit of financial comfort. Is the first kind of, I think, core tool that helps me like kind of build all the other things. I'm not as worried about how I'm going to pay for rent anymore after this, blessing of an acquisition that I had. So that's probably the first tool that helps me get through everything because I'm not worried about that kind of stuff right The second tool is just respecting my team and what they've brought to the table, and using them and their skill sets to build whatever this organization is trying to do, and then strive for what it's trying to do.
Sure.
The next tool is probably respect, right? I think the respect that I have for myself and the respect that I have for everyone around me has tremendously increased. I mean, I was at a point, I mean, you knew that, I was not taking care of myself for a long time. I mean, I was massively overweight. My liver was, having problems. I couldn't process. There's just all this stuff happening. Yeah. And I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't building, the machine that I'm trying to strive for. So I think those three things have been the core that have helped kind of build this, where I am today, and trying to build up to the hopeful leader that I'll continue to be over the next few years. Yeah. But those, I think, are the core tools of what I've seen.
So thinking about it that way, and obviously, having gone through this experience, what have you seen that separates companies that have the kind of success that you've had from, all your friends or classmates in theory who started businesses that didn't go that way?
I think the concept is important, right? You have to do something that people want to buy, not something that you just feel is a good idea. I think that has to be one of the core aspects of being successful. I think, I say this a lot, but being relentless about your product and what that is. I mean, for 2 full years, I was working, I think, 100 hours. Not even kidding. I mean, I was in the office every single day. I was up, our development team is in India. So, by the time everyone leaves the office here, they're waking up and I'm working with them on building the platform. So, I mean, I was working huge hour days. And I think, I don't want to say that about maybe some friends that are building companies that are not as successful, but I don't know if a lot of people are all in like that. And it's not because they don't want to be. It's just maybe their circumstance doesn't allow for it, right? Maybe they have a family. Sure. Maybe they have other aspects that they have to take care of that doesn't allow them to be all in. Single guy, I was by myself, right? And I only had one option, right? I had no girlfriend. There's nothing holding me back from crushing it. So that's all I focused on, was just that in my life. And I suffered. I suffered friendships. I suffered relationships. I suffered things with my family. I mean, I suffered for a result of it. Yeah. But now I'm building it back, right? I'm kind of taking it back. Some aspects I regret, but probably not most of them.
So we have a thing that comes up on this show where some of our guests, are kind of this laser focused, kind of what you're talking about. And then some are they have 5 careers going on. Right. And for my perspective, I can't see that one is better than the other. I think there are advantages and disadvantages to either one. But I don't know if you see that. Do you see, can you think of examples on the opposite side where that's worked really well? People that you look up to or whatever. When I say 5 careers, right? Someone's an author and they have a, business and they DJ and they they have these different things and they may kind of feed each other.
I think there's something to be said about focus. Yeah. And I think that when you look at someone that might have multi-disciplines, I almost bet that probably only one of them actually provides 80% of whatever they're doing. Right. I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think you're probably right. I think that it's very hard for a human being to be really good at many, many different things. It's just our brain actually doesn't even work that way. If you look at multitasking doesn't actually exist. Right. If you look at the research, it's just there's no such thing as multitasking. Totally just finish your job and move on. Yep. So that's kind of my instinct on what that is. And, I prefer to go all in. There's this concept of width versus depth. A lot of people kind of live this personality of width. I want a lot of friends. I want a lot of this. I want a lot of that. But people aren't getting deep. I prefer depth, right? I prefer depth with friendships. I prefer depth with business. I prefer depth with clients, right? Like I want to talk to a client and figure out like, well, what is your real problem? I don't want to, I could spend 20 minutes with you and get maybe this much, but what if I spend an hour with you and get this much? So I'm a guy that prefers depth over width.
What about the influencers that you work with? How is that relationship changing? And like, do those, as you've gotten to know some of those people, like, are they coming to you for advice?
I mean, yes and no, but I think they're mostly coming to my team for advice more than
Fair
anything. Because I've actually, it's interesting. Being a CEO of an influencer marketing business, I don't spend that much time with influencers. And that's just been a choice, which I think I just decided that my focus would be on the brand side versus the influencer side. I have great team members that focus on that piece. So actually, no, I don't think a lot of people come to me. I don't get a lot of kind of inbound. Some people know of me, but they don't really know me. They know that I run this company, but I'm not actually, which is interesting because a lot of CEOs in this space are like, they become really popular. They become these superstars. I never wanted that. I never wanted to be like the guy that was with them every night at this new club or like taking photos with them. And because that's, some people that run influencer companies do that.
It's just down to what you're in it for. Right?
I was always in it for the brands, to be honest. And because I always understood that we were solving their problems more than anything.
So let's ask that question from the brand side then. How's the relationship changing since you started to now with brands and influencers? And what do you see brands doing wrong that, you counsel them on?
I think the concept of how you approach buying and working with influencers is one of the core components that we're trying to help facilitate. So the data-driven side of why you work with a potential digital creator versus the vanity reason why you work with a potential a particular digital creator. And I think that's one of the biggest drive points. I just had a call today with a client, and that was one of the biggest caveats is like, you are teaching us how to actually do this that matters for our business results at the end, right? So either it's impression-based, it's engagement-based, it's performance-based, right? I'm working with this person because they're actually driving business results versus the vanity of whoever they are, or the vanity of their name, or their vanity of their brand. That's kind of one of the biggest drive points that we're trying to go for. The other side is, how does technology help you do this better, right? Because there's a million ways to skin a cat, right? As my dad always says, a million ways to skin a cat. It's probably a bad thing to say, but like, I don't know, that's an analogy that he always gives.
I don't think that's very PC.
It's not PC, but whatever. There's 100 ways to PETA. Sorry, PETA. I'm a vegetarian now, so
you don't need cat.
I don't need cat. No cat for me.
James, order up some fried cat.
But I think the biggest thing is, how do you use tools to help do this better, right? Because influencer marketing is kind of scary for brands. It's like, I'm going to trust this person to talk about my brand and then talk to their audience in this specific way. If I'm working with 30 people, right, and 30 of them are producing 10, 20 pieces of content, you're talking about 1,000 photos and videos. How do you manage thousands of photos and videos? These brands are used to creating one commercial and spending $100 million putting it on bullshit television for everyone to see. That's not how this world works. It's much harder to approve all this content, all these people. How do tools help you do that? How do dashboards help you to do that? We got this thing coming out with Alexa soon, right? Where we're basically going to say, hey, Alexa, what's the analytics on my campaign? And she fires off the analytics on their campaign. Cool. Cool for them because they're just sitting in their office like, I don't have to go to this dashboard now. I can just say it out loud. Alexa's amazing, but I ordered my Uber this morning on Alexa. Game fucking changing.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think, it's interesting you talk about that. Like, as a student of marketing, like, you see a lot of celebrity endorsement stuff, and it just, from the outside, just looks really stupid. But you kind of can get how it happens.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Like, hey, if someone, if I grew up a fan of a artist or particular celebrity, right? And now there's an opportunity to work with them, and and I have this feeling that that person resonates not just with me but with everyone else. And you see them winning Oscars and all that stuff. Like, there's just this very like common sense. It's just common sense.
Yeah.
Why that works, right? And especially people making these marketing decisions for the most part they didn't grow up in the age of technology, right? They're older, or they grew up in very traditional marketing settings. Paying attention to Q scores and Nielsen ratings and all that shit. And then, now they're asked to spend money on a bunch of people they never heard of, whose appeal they don't quite get. And again, I think if you're on the outside of that and you see 10 different Instagram influencers, there's no way you know which one. They basically all look the same.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so I think it is a scary proposition for brands to have to kind of navigate that. And as you said, like even the amount of content and the whole process is so different for them. I don't know what the question is, but I get what you're saying, right? That providing them tools that make that feel more like what they're used to.
Yeah. Make it media-driven advertising, right?
Yeah.
Not make it this touchy-feely kind of thing, because that's what we're trying to strive for. And I think the new evolution of where we're going with bots is now to prove to them that we're driving sales, right? That's the biggest thing that we're kind of moving towards.
So let's talk about the bot thing. I think because back to what we spoke about earlier, which is social giving you the opportunity to have at least what feels like a real human connection with another human being who you never met, right? In a lot of cases. So how, like, think about bots in that context, and what does that mean?
So what we're trying to attempt to do with this bot platform is to scale individualized conversations.
Okay.
So influencers, unfortunately, don't have the ability to comment back and say to all their followers, thank you so much, you're awesome.
Of course.
Provide them value. But what a bot does is create that experience, essentially.
Sure.
So,
but it's not, I mean, you make it sound like it's like an autoresponder, like like you get on email.
No,
but it's not really that.
It's not. No.
Yeah.
It's a dialogue. It's a dialogue device that, like, someone is deciding to opt in to talk to this version of this person.
And the consumer knows that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, like the one that we just released for CoverGirl.
Yeah.
It's called Kalani Bot. It's for a girl named Kalani. She was on Dance Moms, big superstar.
Okay.
And we've driven and created her digital personality with this bot. And it's basically leading to this conversation about how she creates her favorite makeup look with CoverGirl, right? Mm-hmm. But it's her reactions and her comments back are through GIFs and through emojis and through meme and all the things that are like how she would normally talk to her friends brought into a digital experience.
Right.
And thousands of people are engaging to have that dialogue with their favorite person. I do think that that's the way brands will enter the bot world, right? Because fundamentally, like as a person and as a marketer, I don't believe you're going to go follow the Shell bot, right? Like the Shell gas station bot. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But what I believe you'll do is you might follow the Schumacher bot sponsored by Shell.
Sure.
I don't know. Are they together? I don't know if that's his racing.
If not,
sponsor.
we'll put them together.
Yeah, I don't know if that's a racing sponsor for
Right.
Schumacher, but that's the way I would approach it, right? As a brand, to say, hey, let's get this person, because to me, bots are not like a fad thing. Like there was websites, there was apps, and in 2017 there are bots. That's the way it works. E-commerce websites will convert to bots in the next 3 to 5 years. 100%. That's
Sure.
what I bet all in.
Yeah.
That's how you're going to be buying stuff.
No, I believe that. But I think, there's, I just read Eating the Dinosaur, Chuck Klosterman.
I'm going to add it to the list.
It's great. He's a music critic, and I don't know what the hell else he does, but he writes books. And he's got this chapter in there about this idea of authenticity and this idea that artists, specifically musicians, need to be like that they need to they need to be authentic. They need to not pretend to be something they're not, right? And he kind of makes the argument that that's all bullshit. That people don't want authenticity. People want lies that feel real. And that lies sounds negative, right?
Yeah.
But they want stories. Even if you think about Seth Godin, all marketers are liars,
Yeah.
right? It's that they want make-believe that feels like real life. And, and I think, like, if you think back, so bring it back to what we're talking about, right? Like, if I have a problem with Shell, I'm going to call them, and a real person's going to answer. Now, we all got upset in the 90s when they started putting in those automated menu systems to try to direct you to the right place, and you end up spending five minutes navigating that, and they, then you end up having to give the guy your social security number, even though you just typed it in, and like that whole thing. Because ultimately, the belief was what we want is to connect with a real human that can help solve our problem. But what we actually want is just a solution to the problem.
Exactly.
And making it feel human is probably good enough.
Yeah. And that's the reason we use AI to do it.
Right.
We're not like the difference, and I think the push in our platform and the way we're trying to approach the technology is not like if this then that build, right? Like if you say this, then this is what responds back.
Sure.
It's how do you build CNLP, conversational language, natural language processing, to respond. It's another version of NLP, which is natural language processing. It's how a computer reads how you type.
Okay.
Basically. How do you use those inputs to derive your outputs?
Mm-hmm.
How does what that person says to you define what you respond back? That's the AI side of it, right? I think that's the future of how all this stuff is going to be driven is computers are getting pretty fucking smart.
Yeah.
They're getting a lot smarter than we think. And they're learning.
Right.
Like they're actually growing and learning. Alexa gets smarter the more you talk to it.
Right.
Like,
So use the analogy of Uber's gonna introduce self-driving cars,
yep.
which in theory is going to put its drivers out of business.
Yep.
We'll see, how long that takes. I think we'll get there, right? But it might take a while before the government's comfortable letting there be a car with no driver.
Yeah.
But long term, that's probably where it's going, right?
Of course.
So explain to me, like, are you putting your influencers out of business with these bots?
That's a really interesting question. I think no, because we haven't got to the place with AI that AI is actually generating content.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe one day that's going to happen, probably actually, where there'll be actual bots that are influencers.
So like her,
right? Probably maybe get to that place eventually, but no, because there's still a level of we're building this as a derivative of a consistent personality. We're not building a personality as a consistent derivative of another thing. So I would say in the next few years, we're not putting them out of business. No, we still need their content, their creativity. They're building their brands. This is actually for us, our approach to our influencers, this is helping them talk to their audience consistently. I mean, when we released the bot, what I was more amazed of was the comments that we saw on the actual feed were like, thank you so much for creating a version of Kalani that I could talk to all the time.
Yeah. That's cool.
It's cool. It works. And it's still working. That's the thing. It's like we turned it on a month and a half ago and it's just running and it's just itself and there's still people talking to it. We're at almost 600,000 unique messages through this thing without a single person ever saying a word.
So, back to what I was saying about that book, like what is, so how does seeing that change your perception, your understanding of authenticity?
What is authenticity though? Like what is defined as authenticity?
I'm asking you.
I mean, but the question I ask myself is what is actually authentic in our world today?
Right.
Is it authentic because it was created by another human to help drive that? Is it authentic because we had an engineer develop a piece of code that was smart enough to interpret a person's text and respond back?
Mm-hmm.
What is defined as authentic and not authentic anymore, right? I think we often in the brand world, we call, when a brand gets involved with an influencer, it's not authentic. Mm-hmm. It's not real. That's probably true. But what if it's still driven by the influencer's personality? What about they still have some hints built in that? Another human decided that to happen, right? That person that works at the brand is not human. They're still a human being.
Some of them. I get it.
But I think the question is like, what do we define as authentic and not authentic? And I think we have to always look at what is the output from the audience. Does the audience define it as not authentic? If they're happy, aren't you as authentic as you need to be?
Yeah.
Kind of comes back to the same point you were making earlier.
It needs to feel real, or it needs to feel right.
Yeah.
Right. I think that's the deal, with music. So I have like, I grew up in a certain way that, we expected rappers to be telling us the literal truth about their lives. And we got mad as a community when we found out that they were making up stories. But their job is to make up stories.
Yeah.
Right. But at that time in culture, they had to sell it as if it were
Real.
literal. Right. And now they don't have to do that. And some of us are mad about that. Right.
Yeah.
But I think we just have this very sort of interesting but hypocritical relationship with this idea of what's real and what's authentic.
But isn't that why like people follow these stars sometimes, right? Like they live these extravagant lives. They travel and they're on the beach and they're beautiful and they're all these other things. Isn't that why?
Yeah.
That other aspect happens as well. I think
Sure.
some of those aspects are like we wish we had those experiences. We strive for it. That serotonin
absolutely.
level is because I wish I was in that. I like that because I wish that was me. But that's the nature of being human.
Yeah.
That's the nature of our consciousness in most ways.
All right, let's get back to you. What decision has had the biggest impact on your career?
Believing in myself was the biggest impact that I had in my career.
Was there a moment?
I think there was a moment where I said, my future will only be defined by me. Success or failure, I cannot blame anyone fucking else. I can't say that it was because of my parents or because of my friends or because I didn't have support or because of all the fucking bullshit people make up about why their lives suck. I think all that was released, and I said it's up to me to figure out what the fuck I want to do.
Yeah.
That was probably the biggest eye-opening moment that I had, and I had to just cut all the bullshit and stop complaining and just work at it. Another big realization was, I used to, early on in starting the company, I would complain sometimes to either my family or my dad or my friends, like, fuck, I'm working so much, I'm so tired. And then, my dad, being the enlightened entrepreneur that he is, he's like, that's what you fucking want.
Yeah.
And what?
Yeah.
That's what you want. You want to make money?
Yeah.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You can't, if you want to live a comfortable, non-existent life, go work a bullshit job, right? Go do that. But if you want this kind of lifestyle, this is what happens. That was another moment where I just stopped fucking complaining about stuff, right? Those two aspects, I think that I realized that it's all on me. No one's going to help me. No one's going to help you do this. No one's going to help you finish. And then kind of stop complaining. I think those are the two things that were kind of huge in my life.
So what's been the hardest day?
Hardest day of last February, I had a panic attack. I was a couple months, I was in the middle of diligence for the acquisition. And I just had some tough days from client emails, lost a couple big pieces of business. I was super overweight. I wasn't working out. And basically I was driving home in the middle of the day because I was at work. I couldn't function. I started crying in my car and I couldn't breathe. I pulled over to the side. I went outside of the car. I was right here on Washington Boulevard. I had a fucking panic attack. I went to the hospital and my doctor's like, you're fucking stressed. What are you doing to yourself? You're 27. That was probably one of the scariest moments for me. And then what I did after that was I basically called my team. I was like, I need to take a week off. I went fucking down south for a week and just did nothing. Turned off all my phones, all this stuff digitally. A couple of friends came and visited me, but I was in a really bad place. And it was all because of this work thing that happened. And I think after that, I just kind of realized, I was like, this is not worth this kind of thing. luckily a few weeks later the sale went through and life kind of changed and for the better. But man, that was one of the hardest days of my life because I lost control of myself. I mean, when you're uncontrollably crying for hours, it's really hard, man. It's like it's a really hard thing emotionally on you to deal with that.
Sure.
And you're not breathing and all this other stuff is just like, and you think that you can't get there, but like just a little thing can tip it over. But I've kind of realized I never want to be in that place again.
All right, I got a little lightning round.
Sweet. Was that the answer we were looking for? I don't know.
That was a good one. That sounds like a pretty hard day.
Yeah, it was a fucking hard day. It was a hard day.
Okay, let's go back to you're 18 and give yourself one piece of advice.
Man, okay, so this is huge. So I've gone to this thing where I read this in a book, and I think one of these guys, one of this actor did this in a speech at the Oscars, which I found out, which was like, "Who's your hero? My hero is someone I want to be in 10 years." Right? So it's funny because I think about myself. 18 was exactly 10 years ago for me. I think the piece of advice was trust yourself more than anything. Trust your gut more than anything, because that's going to be the right decision that you're making. Because I've started to do that more and more and more in my life, and my gut decisions end up always driving me to the most successful place that I need to be.
Nice. So what's something you used to believe and then decided you'd been wrong?
That other people can affect my actual outcome in my own life.
Great. Is there a talent you always wish you had more of?
I wish I was a better writer.
Like,
My
what
emails are like emails are
okay.
just terrible. I can't even spell or write. I wish I was a better writer, I think.
Mm.
I'm trying to read more to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I wish I was a better writer.
If you were going to choose another career totally separate from this, what would you do?
Man. Probably be a DJ.
Okay.
I'd probably be a DJ.
So if I worked at the amplifier, I was on your team, what would I hear? What's something I would hear you say over and over?
Be relentless in everything that you do. I think one of the big strives that I want my team to do is I think one thing that I love is I'm so fucking proud of my work every day. And I want my team to be proud of what they do every day, because if they're proud of what they do, their clients are going to be super proud of what they do. And if you make your clients look good, you're the fucking king.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one thing that we've always done well, is like we make our clients look really good. They get promotions, they get more money. Like those are the things, like be very proud of what you do and be relentless in every aspect of what you do in your life. I say it a lot. It's the first thing you see when you walk in the office. Huge neon sign says "Be relentless."
Nice.
It's kind of my little thing that I've tried to tell everyone. So that's the one thing I say a lot of.
That's good. Do you collect stuff? What do you collect?
Collect?
Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds douchey, but watches. I guess I have a watch collection. That's
Okay.
That's been my. I don't know if it's
Collect
douchey,
whatever you
but-
want to collect.
Yeah, it's been my thing. Timepieces are. I think it's the one. It's the one piece of jewelry a guy can wear.
Is there a favorite watch or one that is the most meaningful to you?
Yeah, my first one.
Yeah.
My parents got me my first one.
Nice.
Yeah, it was a Breguet. It was my first piece when I started the company. It was like a nice little thing.
What's the last great book you read?
I'm running in between a little bit of Ready Player One.
Mm-hmm.
I love, and I'm almost done with The Way of a Superior Man, which is really good.
I like
It's
that one.
it's like a little bit of kind of, because I think it's a lot about relationships, but I think it's so much more about being a personal, like your personal life, not just relationships. I loved Ready Player One. Dark Matter was good for like fiction also.
I don't know it.
Dark Matter is good. I mean,
Yeah.
because it's like, I would read that one. And a lot. I've been reading a lot lately. So those top three right now.
Nice.
But I love Ready Player One because I think it's really going to happen. I think Mark Zuckerberg is that guy. I swear he's building he's building exactly to a T every aspect of that book.
Okay.
For sure.
Nice. I haven't read it yet. It's on my list. What movie have you seen the most in your life?
The Rock.
Really?
I've seen that over and over and over again. I don't know why.
The like Kevin Costner.
No, Nick Cage
Oh,
and
Nick Cage.
Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Where they take over Alcatraz. I think I've seen that movie more than any other movie in my
I just
life.
found that. I just put that in my queue to watch with Justin.
It's good. It's a good one. It's a
Yeah.
good one. And I think he's got this line. Sean
That's
Connery's got
hilarious.
this line in the movie that's just so epic. He's like, losers bitch, but winners go home and fuck the prom queen. And I think that line is just the epitome of that movie so well.
Nice. I love it. And who's your favorite DJ?
Right now, Bedouin.
Okay.
I'm on this. I saw them at Burning Man,
Yeah.
and these guys are incredible. And I just love their vibe, love their music out of Brooklyn. These two guys, and shout out to them. They're an incredible duo right now. They're blowing up.
Nice. And then lastly, how does everybody find you online?
Just Justin Rezvani on all channels.
Okay.
Just my first name, JustinRezvani. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and then I'm not really fucking with Snapchat that much right now.
We're going to look for those daily affirmations.
Yeah, and then Instagram stories.
Okay.
That's where I play a lot. I love Instagram stories, and then Justin at the Amplify, you want to reach me for work.
Awesome.
Cool, man.
Thanks for doing this, man. This is
Buddy,
great
this
stories.
This is
Appreciate
great. I love time with you as always, and
Dope.
it's amazing. So
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
it. Good stuff, man. I learned a lot, which is cool. Cool. That's it. That's all we got for you. Come back next week for more Rebel Radio. In the meantime, hit us on Twitter, Facebook, check out our YouTube page, and just tell everybody you meet about Rebel Radio.